Hello, as you know, this is Airpax 8 webinar, and we are here with Webmaster Trend Analyst from Google, Martin Splitt. Now it's time to say special thanks to our sponsors and team Serpac for this realization of this webinar series. I'm Nicola Mincu, CEO at Serpac. I have more than 7 years in SEO. My focus in SEO is on technical SEO, SEO strategies, AMP, local SEO, and structured data.
Hello, I'm Diego Grigorov with almost 16 years in SEO. I'm head of SEO at Serpac, and my main focus are the content strategies, semantic optimization and SEO, and the technical SEO. Today, we have a special guest for us called Martin Splitt. Martin is an open source contributor and web evangelist by heart from Zurich, with a decade experience from the trenches of software engineering in multiple fields. He works currently as a webmaster, trends analyst, developer advocate at Google for the search and web ecosystem. He helps people building applications or publishing content on the web to be successful, productive, and visible. Martin believes in the web platform and is working with bleeding-edge technologies that will allow the web to prosper. So, hello, Martin. Nice to be here with us. We're very happy you accepted our invitation, and please tell us more about your significant background. How did you start with Google and web at all?
So first things first, hi everyone. Thank you so much for having me. I don't know if I can live up to all these expectations. So I have been a developer for over 10 years professionally. Actually, wait, it's 2019, so it's like 12 years professionally now. I have done many different things, and I always thought that the web is a fantastic platform to build something that you could share with everyone, or nearly everyone, right? So I've been doing like game development for PlayStation Portable, but not everyone has one of these devices. I've been doing embedded development on certain pieces of hardware in industry and applications, but not everyone has access to the hardware, so you want to like share the information or the data that is collected by this hardware with someone, you build a web interface. It basically kept coming back to me that the web is a great place to be, and it was always like my platform of choice in the sense. And yeah, so I ended up doing a bunch of advocacy work and like helping others be successful in web development as a web developer, as a someone from the ops side. So I did like site reliability engineering at smaller companies and larger companies, and yeah, so I saw the web end from the back of I saw the web from the back end and the front end perspective, and also noticed that one thing that keeps happening is, especially with smaller companies, but also with larger companies, where you would not expect that they are struggling getting their content seen. So the web is gigantic. Yeah, like the web is gigantic, and that's amazing. But if no one finds your page, that's a problem. And there's obviously multiple channels, right? You can have ads, but that needs a budget. You can have like social media campaigns, but that's quite tricky to control sometimes unless you have someone who's really good at social media. Sure, you can build like link networks, but that usually does not turn out the way you want it to turn out. And then there's search engines and organic traffic. And that has been a bit of a like mysterious thing from a web developer's perspective. And I have worked with fantastic SEOs that had a lot of experience and like could guide us there. But then I have also worked with other SEOs where I couldn't figure out why they were not, like why there was such a huge difference, but there was a huge difference in how I saw them do their work and how they came up with requests to me. Some understood that I need stakeholder buy-in as a developer to do something, and they supported me in getting that stakeholder, like basically we're like, we agree on this, but how do I make this happen? Because my priorities look different, because I can't make these decisions. Some of them joined me and helped me, and we became friends and allies in this kind of work. And some people just came with like random requests based out of nowhere, and I'm like, why do we have to do this? And they're like, it's just how it is. And I'm like, I don't like that kind of thing. So when the opportunity came around for me to join Google and look into how web developers and SEOs could work better together, especially by focusing on how Googlebot deals with JavaScript and how we deal with rendering and modern websites, that was super exciting. And I'm still at the beginning of where this is going, but it has been amazing and mind-blowing and super interesting. And I love to see the support from both communities, the SEO community and the web developer community, even though I see that there's some actors that are like a little repulsive to each other, but I try to like figure out how we can work better together and what kind of resources and help it needs.
We really think that you connect the both audiences perfectly. We follow you on Twitter, and we're actually really excited, and we're amazed how you do it in such a friendly way. Not that technical and boring side of the things, but more a friendly way. And you're kind of that easygoing and friendly person that at the same time you provide knowledge and tips, but at the same time you're so friendly with all people. So we learn and we make fun.
Thank you so much. I'm trying my best, and if you ever catch me not explain something well, then just call me out for it. I'm all there to shed some light on things rather than doing the opposite. I might make mistakes, and I apologize for the mistakes I make already. But you know, I'm trying my best to help you out.
Yeah, we appreciate Martin. We recommend to follow the link on social share from today for this event. There you can find a lot of successful video series from Martin about JavaScript and SEO on YouTube channel on Google Webmaster. So we recommend to use this video about every start for different type of JavaScript and SEO. So Martin, the first question is very simple. Why JavaScript?
So that's a simple question, but yet so deep and diverse in how you could answer it. I think JavaScript is just a part of the web platform, right? We have HTML, we have CSS, and we have JavaScript as the main three technologies. Everything else is kind of, you know, an addition, or if you look at the backend technologies, it doesn't really matter that much to the user and the front end side of things. I think JavaScript, it's the same questions like why HTML? HTML provides us with a very expressive way of expressing our content. What does this mean? And then we have CSS, which is like, how does this look like? And that's all you need for websites, for very static websites. If you want to put out information that others can consume, then that's it. That's all you need. But as the web platform became more powerful, there was more demand for more stuff when the user-generated content wave came upon us. I think it was like 2005-ish, 2006-ish when it started. We saw more forums, we saw more web applications, we saw more interaction between the server and the client. And then the problem is that if you consider the client as a dumb terminal and all the magic happens on the server, there will always be this round trip that has to happen over the network. Now, networks get faster, and that's lovely, but still, I would need some stuff like, for instance, I mean, what is the biggest advantage, or was the biggest advantage of mobile apps when the smartphones came out? It was that they worked offline. If I have all my logic on the server side, this device will never be able to have smart web content on this device when I'm offline. So we needed a technology to add behavior, to add dynamic content as well, like a way to interact with the web content that goes beyond just reading information or taking information out of a web page and processing it even in our heads or somewhere else. That's JavaScript. JavaScript was a script language meant to enhance things like, I don't know, give us the possibility to dynamically change the website or toggle something on interactions and actually deal with interactions in the client, like clicks and scrolls and whatnot. But once we had the opportunity to send network requests in the background, it became much more interesting, because now we could mirror what an application would do. Because if you have an application on your computer or on your phone, if you click on something, it doesn't go, oh, spinny, waiting for the network, and then eventually coming back to you, but it does something right away, right? So basically, as long as we can mirror that, and now you say like, yeah, but we have to get the data to the server. Yes, but sometimes that doesn't matter. For instance, if I'm building an instant messenger on the web platform today, if I build a chat, right? I have the possibilities through things like service work, background synchronization and all that to say message being set, like basically show the message right away and let the user do whatever they have to do, even like close the tab or whatever, close the browser, shut down the phone, whatever they need to do. And basically say like this message is being sent. And then eventually when JavaScript has the opportunity to actually kick in and send this in the background, it can do that. So we have technology. This platform allows us to do a bunch of stuff that native applications can do. And it allows us to be a lot more dynamic and a lot more snappy than we used to be, and also more interactive, right? So as I said, web pages, HTML, CSS, you have a thing that has information on it. You can read it. You can maybe click on it. You can play the video, but that's pretty much it. With JavaScript, you now have the opportunity to actually build applications and build more engaging experiences on the web platform. That's why we have it, and that's what it's good at, if used properly.
Yes.
Okay, but how to be sure that Googlebot is able to properly render your website? The hottest question.
That's pretty much like the biggest question or the most frequent question we get.
Yeah.
So, well, the easiest way. So right now we have the situation that the testing tools haven't been updated with the latest Googlebot update. We are working on that. I don't have any timeline for that yet, unfortunately, but we are sure that we are getting that out of the door soonish. Wherever that means, we'll see. But the team is working on it. So basically, the mobile-friendly test is probably the easiest for developers to try out if the content is visible. I say mobile-friendly test specifically. I still think we should rename this tool, honestly, because it's not just that. I mean, it is that, sure, but it is also just much, much more. It's basically URL inspect live test for any URL on the web. So you can use your development server URL. You can use your staging URLs. You can use things like ngrok to tunnel your internal development server on your machine, on your developer machine, to the internet, and then use that in mobile-friendly test. And what it does is it gives you a screenshot of the above the fold content, but that might not be what you look for. But it also gives you the rendered HTML, and that's the HTML that we're going to process for indexing. So if your content is in that, you will be fine. If it doesn't show up there, then it's worth having a closer look. Right now, as I say, we haven't updated these tools to reflect the latest Googlebot. So if you use like ES6 or certain APIs or features, mobile-friendly tests will basically go like, I don't know what this is a problem, but that's a temporary situation. It's suboptimal. We are working on improving that. But basically, if it works and shows up in mobile-friendly tests, it will work in search.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, so why JavaScript SEO is so different compared to the regular SEO practices? What are the most common problems people experience with their JavaScript websites related to SEO? Depends from the different website, of course, but many times loading speed, rendering, meta tags content, internal links between the pages. What do you think?
So the cut out for a second. So I'm not exactly sure about like the middle part of the question, but you asked like, is JavaScript SEO and traditional SEO so different? And I think traditional SEO, a lot of it is strategic and content driven, and like, what do we have here? What is the information that we want to broadcast? What is the information to share with other call to actions that we want people to? What is the intention with coming to us onto this website? And that's something that is inherently very closely linked to the marketing side of things, because what is the intention of the user on this page? And that's something that is not a technical question, right? That's more product / marketing / business question. So now, on the other hand, now that you have a more engaging experience and something that isn't just like, oh, we want the user to fill out this form, or we want the user to inquire about our delivery options or something like that, or our products, but we want them to engage, we want them to create. And the question changes in like, how can we highlight the user-generated content, for instance, or how make sure that the user experience is great once the user is here, because it's great that you get all the users onto your page. But if that page loads 20 megabytes of JavaScript and takes like deliver any content, then there's no amount of wordsmithing, there's no amount of copy editing, and no amount of market strategy that you can employ to actually get people to stay on your page long enough to actually perform whatever you want them to perform on your page. So it becomes more technical then. Because these are inherently technical concerns. Like no amount of amazing content will save you if the page doesn't work. And that means that you need to work with developers, and you need to figure out. So a bunch of times I see like developers are proud of what they do if they are good developers anyway. So good developers are like, I care about the thing that I build and I want people to be able to use it. So they are usually also the ones that get frustrated with bad performance. They just don't have enough leverage to make it into the strategic side of things, or they don't have the experience to bring it over to the strategic side of things, where you can say, if we don't improve our website's performance, we're not going to see any improvement in terms of conversion rate or income or click-through rate. That's something from the marketing side. Now, traditional marketing does not necessarily deal with technology, and that's great. And that's where I think technical SEO comes in, where we have this strategic and business understanding of how things work on that side, but also a technical understanding on the other side, where it's like, I know what our developers need to do if they don't know what to do now. So I can advise them, I can support them with this. They have to do it, but I can help them test it and implement it as well. On the other hand, I understand that this is what developers want to fix, but they can't because the other side hasn't understood that this is an important investment to make. And then you bridge this gap. And that's why I think it's very, very different, because you have to somehow maneuver these two worlds. And I don't think that's easy.
Yeah, but maybe the most common problems are connected. I mean, loading page speed problems are connected with rendering. After that, this reflects to the content, and after that, the meta tags, internal links, and everything. So, how to define what is our first step to define the correct problem? Yeah,
that's a very, very good question. So what steps do you take to identify which possible problems you're having? I think that's also something that you need to be good at data analysis with. So you want to have a look at all the data sources that you've got, like analytics, Search Console, server logs, whatever you've got, to identify what's happening on your page, right? So is it that no one comes to your page? Then you might have a problem with, well, no one comes to your page and you have no impressions on search. Well, then probably there is a problem. And maybe then that's like, maybe this is a crawling problem. Maybe our server falls over before the crawler can actually get the content. No, okay, so the server logs look fine. Right, so in that case, if the server logs look fine, is it that we are not having impressions? We're not having impressions, cool. Does our content get crawled? Yes, our content gets crawled. Oh, that's interesting. So our content gets crawled, our server doesn't fall over, but there's no impressions in search. What's happening? Well, maybe that's a good moment to look at what Googlebot sees when it comes to your site. That's where you can use the URL inspection tool in Search Console, or where you can use the mobile-friendly test. And if you see like a blank page there because there's some weird JavaScript thing going on, then you're like, this is what I need to make sure. I need to make sure that my content is accessible to the crawler and to the bot. That's the first step. So now that we make sure that it's accessible to the bot, we want to make sure that it also is like prioritized correctly in terms of discovery. So if you see, let's say, it's accessible to the bot, but we're not getting crawled, then maybe there's something wasting your crawl budget, or maybe it is an issue of, again, maybe that's when your server falls over, maybe not. Maybe that's when some third-party service that delivers some backend resources takes too long to actually generate the response. If the response time is really high, we might go like, ooh, let's actually reduce the crawl budget a little bit. It can also be that your internal linking structure is not very good, so we are not picking up the relevance between the different pages as much. And then maybe we say like, okay, so now we have fixed that. We have fixed our internal links and our server response quicker. Great. So we get a bunch of clicks in this, actually impressions in search and also clicks in search. But analytics shows us that people are not staying on the pages or not visiting many pages in a row. Then that's a moment where I'm like, maybe look at, you know, page speed insights or Lighthouse and see if your page is just too slow. Because normally people just abandon the pages if they are not loading very fast, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah,
that's something, yeah, that's something that you want to then look at. And basically, you just basically have a huge tree of decisions to make and look at where do people get stuck or where do people disappear, right?
Yeah.
And which part of the many things is it before people come to my page? So is this something in search? Then it's something with meta descriptions, ranking factors, the various ones. Meta descriptions not a ranking factor. The title. So like if you get impressions and no clicks, then probably your titles and meta descriptions are not very good. If you're not getting impressions, then maybe the content is just not very good and we are ranking it lower. It's this kind of stuff. You want to look through this systematically from the beginning of the value chain to the end of the value chain, and then you see where people get stuck or disappear.
Yeah, and maybe we should compare for mobile and for desktop.
Oh, on mobile, loading performance is much bigger.
You thought about work files, server work files. We can check there the Google mobile bot and desktop bot, and to compare the data. What do you think?
Well, you can do that, definitely. Generally speaking, you probably want to make your life easier and make sure that you have like a responsive side that works well in both of them. So yeah, definitely check out if the mobile Googlebot doesn't see much, especially as we increase the mobile first index, where we try to get the mobile pages first into the index. That's going to be more and more important, I believe. But yeah, generally speaking, on mobile, generally, if you see like it works fine on mobile and you have bigger issues on, it works fine on desktop and you have big issues on mobile, that's a strong indicator that there's something that's probably page performance, like in the sense of speed, because mobile networks are specifically sensitive to speed issues.
So in other words, if we have to prioritize things, maybe we have to start with the accessibility and then with the loading speed and the overall performance with relation to the user experience, of course.
More or less, yes. But I would literally look at where do people fall off, right? Do I show up in search? Do I get clicks on search? Do I get analytics data that looks like what we want it to look like? Do people actually click on our page? Do they then perform whatever action we want them to perform? Where do they fall off, right? And then your strategy changes depending on that a little bit, I think.
Yeah. Okay. So what is the current state of the JavaScript rendering by Google at the moment? In our first webinar, John Miller said that you will continue to improve more and more your JavaScript rendering. What is the current state? What is the progress up to the moment? Of course, the information you can share publicly.
Right. So the greatest news, I think, is that we updated Googlebot. So now we are more capable than ever before. We have updated to Chrome 74, which means that we are now on the latest Chrome that you have installed on your machine, probably, if you have it installed on your devices. That unlocked us over 1,000 new APIs and JavaScript features. We now are capable to parse ES 2017. I'm not sure how the compatibility with ES 18 and onwards is looking like. But basically, modern JavaScript is now supported. With that comes a ton of APIs that you can now use. There's still some limitations, I would call it. So you still want to do feature detection and probably polyfilling if needed. But we have made a huge leap forward. It is going to improve our rendering speed, not in the sense of the delay until we render, but the time it takes to actually render, which means you can render more pages. We also have a new modern Chromium, which is great. This keeps updating. So we are already testing a small sample of URLs with the latest version of Chrome, which is, I think, 75 or maybe even 76. I'm not sure which version that is, but basically we keep like improving this quite fast. We have unlocked the potential. As some of you know, it took us quite a while to update from Chrome 41 to Chrome 74. That's a big leap, and that is because we had to undertake efforts to make sure that we can more sustainably update and keep running with this update scheme. So that's like a light year leap ahead that we didn't have before. We continue on improving this. We continue improving the documentation. So if you've ever seen the rendering guide that we put on the developer documentation on dev site, developers.google.com/search/docs/guides/rendering, I believe was the original URL. That has now completely revamped. We completely rewrote that into a troubleshooter. Yeah, so like lots of new features are unlocked. It gets faster. We are working on better integration between rendering and indexing, but that's still out there. There will be an update of the user agent string to reflect the current version of Chrome that we are actually using, but that's also going to be later. So stay tuned. We're going to post something on Google Webmaster Blog a while before we actually update it, so that everyone has a chance to not hard code Googlebot. I mean, the Googlebot string is going to be there, but like the version is going to change continuously, basically. So if you have like hard coded the entire user agent, including the version strings, that's not going to continue to work very long in the future. Yeah, it gets better and better, and continuous improvement is happening.
Nice.
Yeah, okay.
So many frameworks today are following the best practice of the JavaScript and SEO. What do you think about this? Should we can use framework, or we can make our website on our own framework to be well rendered with JavaScript?
So writing your own framework is always risky because you're not having the man and brain power that the open source frameworks have, right? So if I would build my own framework and not share, even if I would share it with the world, it's very unlikely that I get the same developer buy-in as React or Svelte or Ember or Vue or Angular or any of the Polymer, Lit HTML, you name it. They have large communities attached to them. So these communities usually like contribute and work on this together, which is fantastic. I see an interest in making web performance and also SEO better in these frameworks by default. I also work with it, or will improve and continue to work with the framework communities and hoping to like have a collaboration on these kind of efforts. So far, all of the frameworks have been signaling interest in improving there, and they are solid already. And I think they are about to like build in good SEO practices by default, as much as that can be built into technology. Because as I said, SEO is also always something strategic and something about content strategy, market strategy, user journeys. That obviously can't be baked into frameworks, but I think having something that is a turnkey solution to enable and unlock these potentials is great. And we're not there yet, but we're getting there. And I think it's a good time to stop worrying about the frameworks too much.
So one related question, Martin. The frameworks developers, do you have any questions to Google engineers or your team? Do you work with them, or do you support them for any questions?
So the Google engineers for frameworks like Lit HTML, Polymer, or Angular are using the same public channels as everyone else. So we do have what we call the honest results policy, and we feel it is unfair to give preferential treatment to anyone. It doesn't matter if it's like a super huge client, or if it's like the biggest publisher ever, or if it's like a very well-paying ads client or something, or a framework author. It doesn't matter who it is. We have the public channels, use the public channels to get this information. That's why a few people are like, oh, Angular is a Google technology, but has these SEO problems. And we're like, yeah, but what would you expect? They have the same public channels as everyone else. They do not get any special treatment. So why would they be better than everyone? That would be unfair if they would get preferential treatment. They do not get this preferential treatment.
Yeah, great.
No one does.
Great to talk this, because it's very important to all audience to know about this. It's absolutely same rules for everyone, one channel for everyone.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I know that the Angular people are super keen on improving their SEO. That's why they have like built in a bunch of stuff that is great, but they do that themselves. We're not touching it.
Yeah.
And I would like also to add that Martin is super friendly on Twitter, and he's always ready to help, and he provides a lot of help. Actually, I'm every time I'm so excited and amazed how much explanations he provides and how much help he's always ready to help there, which is pretty amazing. Thank you again, Martin, for this, because you know that developers, webmasters, and so on, they all the time have a lot of questions, especially to Google. And
I'm trying my best. It might take a while until I respond, but I'll try.
Of course. And we actually participate in the Google Webmasters forums, and we see all the time the questions like, should we use the Google tools, or maybe we have to use any specific tool to test our website if it's JavaScript based and so on. But actually, we actively support the tools of Google, because we see that actually in the end of the day, they're the most accurate tools when you have to fix something on the website that is visible to Google and it's a registered issue, especially when it comes to JavaScript or even the regular SEO. So the next question here for you is client-side rendering or server-side rendering?
I would say server-side rendering because it has a bunch of benefits besides SEO. So the browser starts parsing HTML as it arrives. The same with CSS. So if you have your style sheets and your content, the browser starts displaying it as soon as it can start displaying it. Unlike JavaScript. JavaScript cannot be parsed or executed in the streaming fashion. So basically, especially on mobile, data comes in, it starts coming in, and then it takes a while until the last bit goes through the line. So using server-side rendering, you have as much content as possible in the HTML already, which means that the data starts showing up in the browser quicker. That's fantastic. It also works better with crawlers and search engines that do not support JavaScript, because the content is, at least some of the content is there. If you do proper server-side rendering, then that means that your links will be just proper links, which means that if you have additional content that just doesn't load with fancy transitions in a crawler that doesn't support that, but it does mean that it gets discovered quicker even in Googlebot, because we have this link extraction at the this escape hatch in the process. Other crawlers will also be dealing with it better, so it's just like a win-win. It's faster for your users. It is better for your bots and crawlers. It gets your links discovered faster, which is sometimes really important. I wouldn't see why you wouldn't do it. There is, that being said, that means an investment in development. You need to make sure that your developers budget that in and have the time and resources to actually make it happen, because it's not the default way.
Okay.
Did you are satisfied?
Sorry?
So, is it proper to detect Googlebot by using user agent and server it pre-render content with plain HTML and CSS?
Yeah, we call that dynamic rendering. That's absolutely fine. It's not considered cloaking as long as the content is more or less the same. And when I say more or less the same, I don't mean that it has to be exactly the same and it has to look exactly the same. It doesn't do that on mobile anyways, right? And my mobile website looks different than my desktop website anyways, and that's fine. Cloaking is specifically when I misdirect or misalign the user, as in I tell the crawler this is about kittens and doggos, and then I actually show an online pharmacy or something like that. That's cloaking. So as long as you do proper pre-rendering, no worries about cloaking. Even Bing said that they say this is a good idea. So dynamic rendering It's a workaround. I would still do like server-side rendering because it gives your users the benefits of a faster loading site. But if you can't make that investment, and dynamic rendering is like a stepping stone to that, like a clutch or not a clutch, a crutch to get to server-side rendering, then do that. It's a workaround. We consider it a workaround.
Okay. So should we consider as mandatory to use a pre-rendered technology in order our website to be properly rendered and respectively indexed by Google? I'm asking you this question because a lot of people started talking about implementing different pre-rendering technologies like prerender.io or something like that. So what is your recommendation here?
So to be very, very clear, when I say pre-rendering, I have a very specific architecture in mind. We had like an I/O talk on this. Pre-rendering means if you have a, let's say like a marketing page or blog where you know very, very well in advance when the content changes, because on my blog, the content only changes if I upload a new blog post or publish a new blog post. So I can pre-render that into static HTML, and I don't see why I wouldn't do that. When we talk about like things like prerender.io or Rendertron or other services, that's probably more like dynamic rendering, where you only serve the pre-rendered content to crawlers. And then I would say again, if you have the capacity to invest in server-side rendering, do that, which is probably better because like these things, pre-rendering solutions like prerender.io and co. usually start a headless browser to like take code that isn't meant to be server-side rendered and basically create the static HTML by that, just having a browser load it. But that means you just imagine that. Just imagine having someone open a browser for you. Whenever you want to access a website, someone has to open a browser, wait for the page to load, take a screenshot, so to speak, and then give you that screenshot. That's fundamentally slower than delivering the HTML straight away, right? And then it's like, okay, yeah, but maybe we can cache something. Yeah, for something like a blog or something that might work really well. But if you have highly dynamic data, not so well, then maybe server-side rendering is just like proper server-side rendering on request using universal JavaScript. Probably a better idea. But generally speaking, I would say look into ways to get to proper server-side rendering in hydration. Maybe watch the JavaScript and Google search talk from I/O. We explain that in much, much more detail. But yeah, so all of these services are good for what they do if you want to do dynamic rendering, but I wouldn't necessarily use that as a long-term strategy.
Yeah, I see. We have also seen many people are talking about the Google cache and how does it have any impact on the performance of on the organic traffic or the overall thing when it comes to SEO for the JavaScript-based websites?
No, the cache has no impact on anything. The cache is a convenience feature. So we basically give out what we happen to find in the cache, basically, but that doesn't tell you anything. It doesn't tell you if we saw your content. It doesn't tell you if we do not see your content. So if the cache is broken, that's tough luck, but the cache is basically a best effort kind of additional feature, but it has no bearings on indexing, crawling, rendering, any of that. Like, so we can happily render the page for indexing, and then the cache thing goes wrong. That just happens.
And another concern of our audience, and something we have seen on the forums, I mean the Google Webmaster forums, sometimes people are very concerned if they see some resources are not properly loaded up. How this impact the SEO in general? When it comes, of course, to the JavaScript-based websites, and not only maybe the regular websites, the HTML, CSS, and JavaScript.
So loading or resource loading issues, it depends if they have an impact or not. So if any of the critical issues fail and continuously fail, so like we're going to retry. That just means that this crawl and this render cycle hasn't gone well. Right? So we'll retry it. If it's a new page, that means we're going to take a little longer to index it. If it's a page that has updated, we might show the content that hasn't updated yet. That can happen. Most of the times, or a lot of times, maybe not most of the times, but a lot of times, the page loading issues come from things that are just not critical, like trackers, ads, what's the other thing? Analytics. So if these don't load, I wouldn't worry about it. As long as your content shows up in the HTML, we'll probably index it.
So maybe we have to be more concerned if, for example, a part of the images are not properly loaded or something like that. Then we have to pay special attention to them and find the problem why they are not loading them.
So if your images are giving us a 404 or 500 something, then that's a problem. If they just like, I don't know, didn't load or give you like another error, I wouldn't worry too much about that.
Yeah, okay, thank you. Thanks again.
Okay, Martin, we have a lot of questions from our audience from different channels. So first one is 1 year after the escape fragment was deprecated, what is the current state of the website based on single page application? Do you have any data about anomalies related to the indexation and rendering of single page application?
I was under the impression that we deprecated this much longer ago, actually. I think it's like 2 years now-ish, 1.5 years. Anyway, so the state of things. So we added this kind of stuff, this feature of escape fragments, because in the beginning, in around 2015, 16-ish, 2005, 2006-ish, Ajax came about, and then single-page applications came around, and that was a time when we as developers did not have any way of doing proper single-page apps with like changing the content when the navigation event would happen without actually having the page reload. So the way we dealt with that as developers was we abused fragment URLs. Fragments in URLs are meant to point to a specific part of the larger document. Let's say you have a very long Wikipedia article about a music band, and you actually only care about their releases. Then you could say, actually, I want to share the releases part of this with someone. So you would right-click on the releases headline, and that has like hash or the pound or whatever you want to call it, the fragment thing releases, which means that if I go to this URL, I automatically scroll to the releases part. But for us as a search engine, for Google as a search engine, that doesn't matter. We have this page, this very long page with all this content. So if I'm looking for this band name and releases, it's part of this document. Cool. I'll send you there, and then you can use the navigation to go, or just like scroll to the releases part of things. But it's this, that every content is like, it's the same content, it's just a part of this content. When you do that in single page applications, when you use the fragment URL to load different content, that's using this fragment for something that it's not intended for. You're loading different content. Now there's content that isn't there until you go to this specific fragment. As a workaround, we implemented this escape fragment thing. That was fine, except it is very complicated. You can still do a lot of weird things that can go wrong, and it's a lot of code on our side. So it became a liability a little bit, right? So like more code is more bugs. That's just how it works. Yes, you can minimize the amount of bugs with quality control, which we're doing. We have plenty of tests for everything, but still more code can and will contain more bugs than less code. So eventually we figured, wait a minute, there is this feature that has been around since, when did it came out? History API. I wonder when that was specified, but I think it has been around for quite a while. So I definitely see, where's the compatibility table? Here we go. It is supported down to IE 12. So like the first Edge does have it. I think IE 11 has it. If only I would find that now. Ah, yeah, here it is. No, actually, IE 10 supports History API already. Opera 11, Safari 5. Firefox 4, Chrome 5. So like this has been around for a long time. Not sure when it was initially added, but like long time ago. So we figured, hey, we have a proper way of using URLs and changing the browser history state so that single-page applications can use proper URLs to show us different content. And it has been widely adopted, and pretty much all the frameworks support it. Most of them out of the box. Some of them you need to change like a simple setting, and it just works. And the worst case that can happen if you go on, like, let's say I come with an Internet Explorer 6 to a page that uses it, then I get a fully, like a proper page reload instead of the JavaScript transition or something. That is fine, to be honest. That is perfectly acceptable. And we think it's the better way to build things these days because they perform as you expect them. They interact with the browser history as you expect them. They do not hack how the URL is supposed to work. And that means that after we deprecated this and gave it a while, we can start removing the code that we wrote specifically for this kind of stuff, which means that we have less code to maintain, which means more stability, which is something that we all strive for. So the best practice to implement single-page application navigation these days is to use History API, and there's no good reason not to.
Thank you for this great explanation.
Absolutely.
Okay, so next question from our audience, from Dimo Beoff. What about rendering in non-script tags, like some big JavaScript form engines do? Is it a legit way for Google?
Yeah, well. So no script, there's generally speaking, as we do execute JavaScript and render JavaScript, we basically ignore what's in NoScript, except for images. We have this specific workaround. If you have, let's say, like lazy loading images or something like that, then you can use NoScript tags to give us images that we should load that won't be affecting the page performance for people in regular browsers. This still works, but besides images, I wouldn't use NoScript.
Okay, thanks. And one more question from our audience, again from Dimo Beoff. Could we expect in the near future the need of SSR to be dropped and the bot to work naturally with JavaScript sites without impacting SEO performance?
The bot works with JavaScript sites naturally. So there's no implicit or explicit need for server-side rendering in terms of SEO. You're not going to hurt yourself with not having it. But again, your user experience is going to be better. Your site performance is like the loading performance is going to be faster. Content is going to show up quicker. So the first contentful paint is going to be faster. And generally speaking, you need less JavaScript to get into the critical path. So I don't think that's going to change very soon. I think this is a very fundamental aspect of how the web works. If you want the best of both worlds, I highly recommend server-side rendering plus hydration. That gives you like optional JavaScript that enhances the site, but the basic site is still in HTML content. I don't think anyone's going to drop that anytime soon because it has user benefits and still SEO benefits in the sense of that we can extract the links faster. Maybe that last bit where we extract the links faster is eventually going to go away, but I still think you don't lose anything if you do it. I think it's a good strategy to go SSR and hydration rather than client-side rendering. Also makes your page more robust. JavaScript fails sometimes. If all your content is displayed by JavaScript, you're not going to have any content on the page. That's not going to be great.
But just sometimes.
Well, things like I'm on this phone. I go into a tunnel with the metro or with the train, and then the JavaScript is still loading, gets interrupted. I see nothing on the page. If the HTML would have been there with the most important content, maybe I don't get the images. Maybe I don't get like the fancy bits and pieces of interactivity, but at least my content is there and I can read the content already.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Less frustrating.
Yes, so you started a very interesting topic actually about hidden parts of code and content of a website or something like that. So we have seen some concerns again from the people around Twitter, around the webmasters forums, and these concerns are related to the schema.org. We really love your documentation when it comes to the markup of the elements of the website and so on. But sometimes people are concerned on this that the schema is not visible. Of course, it's not a bug of the Googlebot or something like that. So, but what are recommendations? How to make our schema.org visible to Google? It will give us the chance to be included in your so great elements on the search.
Right. So when you say like not visible, you mean it's not leading you to rich results, or not visible visually? I'm not sure.
I mean, it's not read properly.
Ah, okay, right. Well, for most of the rich result types, I highly recommend using the rich results test. It's going to tell you why it's not read properly. I know that there's some interactions with JavaScript that I need to look into what's going on there. But generally speaking, if it shows up in rich results as valid for the rich result types, and if it shows up in structured data test as valid as well, then you should be fine. But I would definitely recommend these two tools to like check out. If rich results test supports it, use rich results test. If it doesn't, then use a structured data test.
So this is the actually we have to test and see what is the main problem.
Yeah.
And how to of course to find a decision how to fix it, so we can make it.
Search Console should also warn you if something is amiss.
Yes, we didn't mention it, but actually the Search Console is where we end up in the end of the day, and we look for solutions and we look for problems. Because if you don't have problems, this is also concerning. Yes. In the last part of our webinar, we have a fun part actually. And we have a question about the most appropriate alt tag for the following image. You should see the image here in the chat. Our audience will see it now too. So let us know what kind of alt tag would you put here.
Martin Splitt wearing an orange squid hat at Google I/O, I think, is probably the best alt tag.
It's actually a very, very funny, but at the same time a very nice photo of you.
It's a quite nice photo. I love that the wind is like moving the tentacles in front of my face, and I'm wearing my 8-bit sunglasses. It's very well done.
Yeah.
John took that picture.
Whoa! That's great. And in the end, we will be very happy if you share some impressions about the Google I/O event. We are aware of this event here in Bulgaria, and we were very interested. Unfortunately, not all of us had the chance to visit it, but we will be happy if you can share some impressions and what is it to be there at Google I/O?
Oh, that's a rough question because it's very, very different for attendees and Googlers. I think like attendees are just like having a blast. There's so much to do. You have all the sessions, which I honestly think the sessions are great. It's worthwhile going there, but they're also recorded. So if it's like sessions or meeting people that you normally don't meet, I would always go for meeting people. So there's like so many people from different communities. There's a bunch of product experts there. There's a bunch of Google developer experts there. There's just like people from the Google developer groups are there, and they just meet and mingle and mix and talk about stuff. There's plenty of meetups as well. So if it's like some people talk about community building. We had a Ask Me Anything with the Chrome team or with the web team. So I was there as well. You could ask questions. I did like a roundtable kind of thing to hopefully start in the small circle, start getting some developers together with some SEOs as well. It's just wild. But as a Googler, it is amazing and exhausting at the same time. So there's a concert at one day in the evening, and there was like a roller disco, and all these cool things are happening, and you basically are always too tired to actually do them. So my day started in the morning when I read through emails that happened in Europe time zones, and I worked on like some issues there. And then you try out your run through and rehearse your presentations. Our presentations were on the third day, so you were nervous the entire time. And you had breakfast in the office, and then you went to I/O, and then you went to the office hours and answered all the questions coming from people. And then you went to the demo area, to the sandboxes, and just like answered questions there and showed Search Console, for instance. I did that a few times. And you meet people in the community lounge and talk to them about all sorts of things. And then you have your session, and then you're tired. You're really, really tired. You have meetings as well, because you're in Mountain View, so might as well meet the teams who are there. And then after 10, 11 hours of interacting with so many fantastic people, it's a lot of fun, but you're really, really tired. And then you just take a car home or a bike home to the hotel realistically. And I was just like, I'll just go across the street, grab some Mexican food, watch 1 or 2 episodes of my favorite series, and then sleep. And then the next morning, 8 o'clock, it all starts again.
Truly understand you. Actually, so we're on the What's Mean So Far webinar. If you summarize everything we discussed today, can you share some summarized tips for our audience and their JavaScript-based website so we can make them SEO friendly for Google?
Talk to your developers. That's always worthwhile. Check your performance. That's always a good idea. When you talk to your developers, check are they aware of the very basic issues that there might be. Try to identify the issues. Try to find documentation or anything that backs you up as data, because developers like to see data. What else? Consider making a case, or helping your developers making a case for improving your performance, and maybe even using server-side rendering or server-side rendering and hydration. If your developers don't know why or what that is, then I highly recommend the rendering talk from Google I/O. There's a talk about rendering on the web, I believe it's called, that I would definitely recommend, or show them our talk. We talk about this as well at I/O. And yeah, test, and then you'll be fine.
Great advice.
Thank you, Martin. Thank you, everybody, for being with us today. Thank you to our team and their great work during this webinar. We will be exciting you next month to announce our next guest. Meanwhile, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, where you can find a lot of useful knowledge and information in our SERPask series. Thank you so much, Martin.
Thank you so much for having me.
And for sharing your amazing knowledge and tips directly from a Googler. We hope you will be with us again in the future. So see you all next time.
Thank you so much, and have a great day and enjoy.